the first person on the accident scene was a photographer. Yeah.
That's terrible. Before like
Mhm.
emergency.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Joci and I have been sitting here like trying to seal our lips shut because we have so much to talk about, right?
Yeah, literally.
Thank you for coming on Real Pod. I was so touched when you texted me and said you wanted to come on the show and share your story because that's just so flattering. I think, you know, as a podcast host and then having a friend and a fellow creator who's like, I vibe what you're doing and I would be down to come on and get real. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
We were catching up on married life. We both had like similar wedding timelines. We did the bride shoot together, which is how we met. And then ever since, we shared the same wedding day content creator or content specialist. And now I feel like we have such similar like wedding trajectories. Maybe we'll get pregnant at the same time. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, God.
How long have you guys been together?
So we got together our junior year of high school.
Wow.
And so it's been 7 years since then.
Oh my gosh, high school sweethearts.
Yes.
That is everything. I love that. So he's been with you through a lot.
Through everything.
Wow. Sometimes when people have been through traumatic experiences in life, they can lean towards wanting to share that story and then wanting to maybe like move past that, not have it define them. I've had a variety of awesome guests on this podcast who've, you know, been through traumatic experiences, and it's kind of depends on the person, like what their approach is. I'm just wondering, you know, what it is that draws you to feeling so open.
Yeah. I think it was kind of something that just developed over time because when I had my accident, we wanted to put a lid on it right away because we got into our accident in a different state and not a lot of people knew a lot of the details. So I remember everybody just wanted to keep it really private. And I'm thankful for that because then I got to kind of share what was going on with me in my own way instead of the news kind of blowing it up. Mainly why I want to share my story is because I want to help people that are going through maybe not the same thing, but a similar thing, like a life-altering injury is something that is really hard to come to terms with at any point in your life. And I want people to see that, you know, it doesn't have to define you. It can propel you in a different direction that you may never have even thought you would go, which I think is true for me. And I just want people to know that your life can still take a great path and can have a better meaning than maybe you thought you would have.
So let's take it back to the accident day. Was this 2020?
2019.
Okay, but just before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And what was this day like? What was your morning like?
I actually remember this morning very clearly. I went to work in the morning. I worked as a receptionist in my mom's office. And I left in the morning because we were planning to go pick up my sister from Rhode Island. And so I picked up my brother from home and we went to get Chipotle for the family.
Love that bowl burrito salad.
So I picked up the Chipotle and then we went to my dad's hangar where he was like getting the plane ready.
So your dad's a pilot?
Yes. So he's actually a doctor, but he got his pilot's license probably 25, 30 years ago. So I grew up flying with him my whole life. And I never had any reason to be like afraid when he was flying just because it was like riding in the car with him. And so we got in the plane and, you know, everything was normal. I'm scarfing down the Chipotle. I'm writing an essay for my summer class. And I think I took a nap or something. And then I remember like we were circling for a while and that didn't feel normal because we were just kind of going in circles. And then my dad was like turning around talking to my mom. My brother was in the front with him and my mom and I were in the back. So he was like talking to my mom and I could sense a little bit of like stress, but I was like, you know, it's going to be fine. And then he turned around and he was like, we're going to have to land. We're running out of gas and it might be a little bit bumpy. So then I was like, okay. So I kind of like took a deep breath, prepared myself. I wasn't like crazy anxious, but I was starting to get a little stressed. And then I remember we were like approaching the runway and my dad could tell that we were going to be short of the runway. And so he turned the plane towards this like bushy area. And we kind of like bounced a few times in there and skidded. And then we like landed halfway in this like bush. So definitely not how I thought my morning would go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's kind of how that accident happened. And then Yeah.
Did anyone lose consciousness during this landing?
So my dad did. He had a traumatic brain injury and he's made a full recovery. So initially it looked like he was going to be the worst injury. And then when I went to stand up to get out of the plane, I couldn't.
Does your mom, who's conscious, start panicking in this moment?
Yes. She was pretty calm until I told her I couldn't move my legs. And I think that was when the panic really set in for her because her husband was unconscious and bleeding in the front seat. And then her daughter saying, I can't move my legs. I can't move my legs. And I think then my mom and my brother really started to panic. So
I've known you for a little bit now, and I can tell your personality. You seem very calm, collected. It'd be hard for me to think of you, Joci Scott, like raising your voice because you're so chill. You have this beautiful aura. In this situation, did you lean towards like survival mode of like deep breaths, like keep my shit together, we'll figure it out? Or were you screaming and starting to cry?
I was completely calm. Like, I think my brain just shut off any emotion. I was pretty calm the whole time considering. Like I said, we just put a lid on it. And I think that's kind of how I've grown up my whole life is just putting a lid on things.
When you say we, I'm getting a sense it's everyone else put a lid on it and you just followed suit.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So my mom is a very she can take control, take charge. So then she surprisingly had her phone. She's the only one who had her phone. So she called 911 and they couldn't find us for a while because we were hidden in the bushes and we were far away from the road. So my poor brother's in the front seat, holding a towel on my dad's head. And
my gosh.
And I was just sitting in the back, just waiting for the paramedics. I don't know how long we were waiting. I think it was maybe about 15 or 20 minutes, but it felt like forever.
And were you guys sitting there thinking you had lost your dad?
I didn't even let myself go there, honestly. I don't even remember having a thought in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I think I just completely shut down and was in preservation mode.
Upon getting to the hospital, were you rushed straight off to what I would imagine is scans, x-rays, surgery? Where did each person go upon getting to the emergency room?
So we each went to different hospitals. My dad, me, and my brother, they life flighted my dad to a level 1 trauma center. They took me to a level 2, and they took my brother somewhere else. He had some contusions and bruises and stuff. So then they looked at my mom and they said, where do you want to go?
Oh my gosh. I was just thinking about your mom's choice right now.
Mm-hmm.
Where did she go?
She went with me.
Oh, that's sweet.
And she always said to me, Dad would have wanted me to go with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so she came with me and I went and was examined. The neurologist came in and went to the x-rays and CAT scans. And after that, my memory gets a little fuzzy because they started pumping me with morphine and stuff. But I do remember coming back to Alex. I remember asking a nurse, can I call my boyfriend? Because I haven't let him know what's happening. And I don't know if at that point he had gotten the call from my sister or not. But I remember I called him and I don't remember what I said, but I was I have to call him.
And do you remember his reaction?
I think he was pretty calm. Poor guy had to go to work. He went to work that day. I think he was just trying to hold it together, even though I'm sure on the inside he was just so scared.
When do you start to kind of snap back in and your brain starts to turn on?
It took a while, honestly. I went into surgery that night. It was a 7-hour surgery to repair the fracture in my back and control the internal bleeding I had. And I think I was kind of really out of it for 4 days just because of the anesthesia and all of that. And so I think 4 or 5 days later, one of the first things I remember is asking the doctor, will I walk again? And he looked at me and he was like, I don't know.
Mm.
And I think that moment was shattering for me. And I was like, well, I can still try, right? And he was like, yeah, we just don't know. We can't tell you for sure. And that was really hard to come to terms with.
How old are you at this time?
20.
And you were a big part of musical theater in high school, performer, dancer, singer. And so it's the ability to move your body in that way is a part of what is your passion in life.
Yes. Yeah, I had just finished a show at my community theater, a production of Mamma Mia, and I just remember being like, was that the last time I'm ever gonna get on a stage? Was that the last time I'm ever gonna, like, sing, dance, do what literally sets my heart on fire?
Mhm.
And that sucked.
Yeah. And when you say that we, quote, "put a lid on it," does this mean, like, were you not able to call friends, extended family? Like, I guess who were we keeping this a secret from?
I mean, Alex was really good about updating, like, my close friends and my mom, and she had family fly in, so, like, our friends and family knew what was going on. It was more of, like, social media, the news,
Mhm.
because the first person on the accident scene was a photographer. Yeah.
That's terrible before, like,
Mhm. Yeah.
emergency. Oh my gosh. What a, like, animalistic, like, violation of your privacy. That's
Mhm.
horrible.
Yeah, and my mom looked at him and was like, "Are you gonna help?" And just nothing.
Didn't say a word.
Yeah.
That is horrible. Wow.
So,
People are evil.
yeah, so, like, eventually our names got out, but they really tried to not, like, share what my injuries were and what my brother's injury were, but then they kind of figured out, but they got it wrong. They said my brother had the back injury. They said I was, like, 40. So, it was like they were trying, but
That's so invasive when you're trying to process what's happening to you, and other people are just trying to get clicks.
Mhm.
Wow. I just, like,
Yeah.
kinda shocked. So, you know, your mom's position in this, she's coming out, healthy without.
Yeah, she had a concussion, but she didn't even get that checked out for, like, 3 days just because she was, like,
Mhm.
literally by my side until finally, like, one of the nurses was like, "You need to go
Yeah.
go get checked out."
So when did you get discharged?
Ugh. Well, I was in the ICU for 12 days, and then I had to go immediately to a different hospital that specialized in spinal cord injury rehab. And it was there that my dad and I finally got to see each other because the second floor was for spinal cord injuries and the third floor was for traumatic brain injuries. So my mom and my dad's parents, my grandparents, they coordinated all of that so that we could all be in the same place because he was an hour away from me when we were both in ICU. So my mom was like driving back and forth, and luckily we had other family that was in town that came in town to like stay with me, but it was just too difficult for her to like go back and forth.
I could imagine your dad having been the pilot, driving the plane, there's an added element of responsibility. Did he feel that way? Did you feel that way? Did your mom feel that way?
You know, I think my dad is always gonna have a little bit of responsibility and guilt about that, and he can't remember that day.
At all, so
Yeah, so
wow.
he doesn't know why he did what he did, so I think that even makes it a little harder because he doesn't know if there was something differently he could have done to prevent my injury, and I don't blame him at all because it would be the same as if, like, he was driving a car and, like, somebody else hit us or, like, a tree fell down into the street, like,
Mhm.
it's just an accident, and I don't blame anybody.
When do you start to turn the page towards more of a hopeful mindset?
Well, initially, that hope was propelled by my mom. She was, like, my biggest supporter, and she was like, "Okay, we're gonna do all the therapies, and you're gonna walk again, like, we're gonna see all the specialists," and my mom has this, like, amazing strong faith, and she was like, "We're gonna get through this," and that helped me a lot going through the initial, like, hospital phase because I was in rehab for 6 weeks in New Jersey, away from all my friends in Ohio who were starting their junior year of college.
Mhm.
Alex was starting his junior year of college, and I just felt so behind and, like, stuck and out of place, like, I felt like I was just plucked from my life that I was enjoying and put into this situation unfairly,
Mhm.
and I remember, like, I was just like, "Well, I can sit here and be miserable about it, or I can take this and make something better out of it," you know? Like, I didn't wanna sit there and be miserable. So I remember, like, sitting in the hospital watching whatever was playing on TV, like Friends or something, and I was like, "I've never seen somebody in a wheelchair on TV."
Mhm.
You know, Ali Stroker had just won the Tony
I
Award.
love her. I saw her on
She's
the Glee
amazing.
project.
She's amazing. Love her so much, and she was the first person I saw literally on a television screen in a wheelchair that wasn't like a hospital patient on
Mhm.
Grey's Anatomy, and I was like, "That's crazy," because there has to be more people out there, and I felt so alone because spinal cord injuries predominantly happen to men, young men in their, like, 20s, 30s, 40s. So I was, like, the only young girl on my floor, and that, like, sucked. And I bonded a lot with, like, my therapists and everything, but, like, they weren't the ones who could understand, like, fully. And that left, like, an opening in my life, I think, for somebody who I could, like, really relate to.
Mhm.
So I think that's what led me to the Rolettes, which we can get to later in the conversation. But I remember just, like, seeing the lack of representation and thinking to myself, like, my goal can be to walk again, but I also wanna, like, make the most of this time that I'm gonna have in a wheelchair.
Mhm. It's tough too when you're keeping this hope, but, it's like you'd almost rather have someone look at you definitively and say, "You will never walk again," so that you can properly mourn that and never have this shred of, "If I had seen a different doctor, if I had gone here, if I had done that."
Mhm. I thought that to myself many, many times. Many
Like,
times.
if there would have been something slightly different, could things have changed?
No, just, like, I wish somebody would look at me and say, "It's not gonna happen."
And no one ever did that.
Not really.
Now, being a few years past the accident, is that the reality that you believe, or is there still hope and you're still rehabbing and there's
You know, I don't really do rehab anymore. I'm still active. I go to the gym. I keep myself strong. I walk with leg braces, but I don't want to like spend my whole life working towards something that, every they say in 5 years we'll cure spinal cord injury. And then 5 years go by, nothing. Then they're like, "Oh, but then this technology, in 5 years." I'm not going to sit around and wait for it to happen because life is too short.
so you, in other words, have given yourself permission to live a fulfilling and wonderful life in this reality and not wait for someone to invent something that's going to say, now you can get back to your life.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly it.
I think it's so amazing that you were literally in this situation in the hospital and starting to have these thoughts about representation. I mean, that's like major. I feel like people wouldn't get there for year or two later.
Yeah, well, I mean, entertainment is always something I've been passionate about, and, thinking to myself, like, "Am I ever gonna have this opportunity again?" Then I think my brain immediately started being like, "Well, has somebody else done it?"
Mhm.
And after some research, like, I've seen that there are people that have done it, but I remember, like, before I was disabled, I didn't see anything, and that shouldn't be the norm.
Mhm. So I do want to talk about the Rolettes. How did you even, coming from a place of not really knowing many people in wheelchairs performing other than Ali Stroker, how do you come across the Rolettes? I actually discovered them because of you and following you.
Oh. Yeah, so my college roommate, she actually sent me Chelsea Hill's page. Chelsea Hill is the founder of the Rolettes. She founded the company back in, like, 2012, and she sent me Chelsea's page, and I was like, "Oh, wow, she's really pretty, and she has, like, such a tiny little wheelchair." And then I looked at her page, and I was like, "She's doing some really cool, like, dance moves. She's doing, like, crazy lifts with partners, like, lifting her in the air and, like, cool hip hop stuff." And I was like, "That's so cool." Through her, I found the Rolettes, and I was like, "Oh my god, there's so many of them." And I remember just being like, "That's so cool." Like, I would love to be a part of something like that. And when the pandemic, they started doing, like, Zoom dance classes, and they started Boundless Babe Society, which is a mentorship program for women with disabilities. And so I joined that because I was like, "Oh, that's so cool." Like, I can, meet other women with maybe spinal cord injuries or other disabilities and just kind of like learn about like being our best selves. And that program was really valuable for just like learning how to like present yourself and um, achieving your goals. Like it's all about like goal setting, and that's like my thing. So it was great.
What sort of impact has the Rolettes had on your life now, being a part of it?
The Rolettes has just brought like this community of like powerful, amazing women into my life that I didn't even know this community existed before I was disabled or before I used a wheelchair. And our mission as the Rolettes company is to empower women to live boundlessly and shift perspectives through dance. So the meaning of like, we use the term a boundless babe. And being boundless babe means, not letting anything limit you. For us, we don't let our disabilities limit us. But a boundless babe doesn't have to be somebody with a disability. You're a boundless babe. Like everything that you stand for is like the epitome of a boundless babe. And every year, we have this it's like a little camp, but it's not really little anymore. We had 250 attendees in July.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah. In July, we have the Rolettes Experience. We just celebrated the 10th anniversary. It started with like 7 girls in a dance studio sleeping on the floor of somebody's apartment. And now it's grown.
Love that.
We have a giant stage. We do dance classes, makeup seminars. We had a modeling class. We have panels about like game changers in the community, panels about like, we're going to have film and representation this year. We're hoping to bring more of like dating with a disability and relationships into the mix. We really just want like a space for women with disabilities to come and feel like their experiences are honored and shared and to learn from each other, like because there's so many things about life with a disability that I didn't know about, like traveling is like a whole other hassle. As somebody who traveled a lot, like I had to learn a lot of different things about like traveling with my wheelchair. And then accessibility, not just for people with mobility disabilities, but also for people who are hearing and visually impaired. And just like welcoming this community into one big event. We welcome all women with disabilities. And it's really cool to just meet people and hear their stories and hear about their experiences growing up with their disability. We have girls from, age 3 to age whatever, like the little ones to however old. Like it's one of the favorite parts of my year because everybody just comes together.
Do you mentor some of these cuties? I'm thinking of this little 3-year-old.
I wouldn't say I'm like an official mentor, but I have taught some of the kids dance classes. And then as far as like my mentors, I really look up to Chelsea as a mentor. Connor Lundius is the team dance captain. I really look up to her as well. And then even Allie, I got the chance to meet Allie before I was a Rolette, but she stayed in contact with me and she's been such a great like resource and inspiration to me. So
I love that. From the outside too, it's a way, it seems, to use your wheelchair as part of your performance and as part of what you're doing and not, trying to, like, it's embracing it instead of wishing you were out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And right around when I found the Rolettes, I had just joined a production at my community theater of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. It was the same team who did Mamma Mia before my accident. And they were like, we need another girl for the ensemble. Like, would you be interested? And I had just gotten home from the hospital like 2 weeks ago. And I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. Like, I didn't know if I was ready to be on a stage in my wheelchair. And before seeing the Rolettes, I didn't know how I was going to like use the wheelchair as part of the dance. And my mom and dad, they were both like, you need something that isn't therapy. Like you need something to go to that is fun and takes your mind off of it. And I was like nervous, like if my performance would change, if like how people saw me would change. And that was really like scary experience, but so valuable and so rewarding. And with that experience, that was when I went to the news and I said, I'll tell my story, but this is how I'm going to tell it, with this story of I'm returning back to what I love to do.
That's so powerful. I love Joseph.
Yes.
Joseph and Sons. I think they had that. When I was in middle school, I think I was maybe in the ensemble of Joseph, but I was like in like 6th grade. So I was not what you were doing probably. To go back out there, truly, like in the same facility, going to do your makeup. And I remember back at a lot of these stages, there's stairs, you're going down. I mean, those adjustments, like what were you most shocked about in terms of accessibility in your new life that you had not thought about before?
Yeah, in the theater, like, they built a ramp for me to get onto the set. There was, like a higher platform. They built a ramp to go up there, and then they had an elevator to go up to the dressing room, thankfully. That was a better experience I've had than in, like, some other theaters that I've been a part of, but
I saw you even posting when you were planning your wedding, having to ensure that the venues were going to be accessible.
mhm. Yeah, the venue that we chose, they actually had, like, a giant freight elevator, so that was really cool, but we immediately knew that, like, a beach was out of the question just because of, beaches and wheelchairs, like, you gotta have with the big, like, rubbery wheels. I was like, "I don't wanna be in that on my wedding day and then, like, have to deal with all the sand and stuff," so anything, like, that wasn't on, like, a paved, like,
Mhm.
hard, smooth floor was kind of out of the question.
You mentioned earlier at your wedding, you said our families like kept it together. And then you told me his parents are divorced and your parents are in the midst of a divorce. Dealing with that as an adult, I think is unique in itself because people might look at it and think, oh, you're an adult now. Like your parents were married for a lot of your life. Like at least you had that. You know, this person's parents divorced when they're six. Like I see you making your face. I'm so curious your thoughts and kind of how you've been handling that. It's one of the most difficult things to go through as a kid.
Well, yeah, like you said, Alex's parents got divorced when he was 6, so he grew up his whole life with his parents being divorced, and mine have just started this process, like, a year ago or so, and I think, like, going through it as an adult, like, you kind of wonder if your childhood was, like, a lie, like, you wonder what was going on behind the scenes that you didn't know about. But for me, I like to think about it as, like, my childhood is, like, in this cute little box, and it was, like, good while it was happening, and, like, I have fantastic memories of us all being a family, but, like, planning my wedding while my parents were going through that was, like, hard because it's, like, where do you seat everybody where people aren't gonna fight and, like, have a fit, and who's gonna walk with who, and it just added a lot of, like, extra complications that I wasn't really prepared to have.
Did you know that this was coming?
I didn't. I mean, you know, they say, like, having a child who's sick or injured can, like, make or break a relationship, and I unfortunately think that may have been part of what happened with my parents, which is kind of hard to grapple with, but, you know, I didn't really see it coming at that specific time. It
Mm.
was kind of, like, not the greatest timing, but yeah.
So was Alex a huge support for you because he has, been there in a sense and could really understand?
Mhm. Yeah, I remember him saying, like, "I actually know how to help you with this." He was so not happy that it was happening, but he was happy that he, like, at least knew what he could do to provide support. So, he's just been so supportive through the accident, through, you know, the pandemic, through moving to Los Angeles, a new city. He came with me. He's been so supportive of me and my career, in my, you know, my health, my mental health, my physical health. He's just been so loving and supportive through all of it.
Mm. And how did you manage these different relationships at your wedding? I think there are a lot of people who also have parents who are divorced, going through divorce, don't speak, it's tumultuous in a sense. Like, how did you get yourself in a headspace to enjoy this day and to love your mom and also love your dad and, want to be happy? Like, how did you work through that? And yeah, what's the advice here?
I think, well, I'm really lucky because I have a lot of family who, you know, they each went and talked to my mom and dad separately, and they were like, "This is Josie's day. Like, you just focus on having a good time and everything." And so I think having people behind you that are more removed from the situation, it was my aunt on my mom's side, having people that are, like, not in the thick of it, but close enough to each parent or family member to, like, sit them down and say, "Hey, this is so and so's day. We want them to have the best day possible, and, like, you should also have fun because, like, your daughter's getting married, your oldest daughter
Mhm.
is getting married." So, you know, Alex and I, we spent a lot of time on the seating chart, which is normal for most weddings, but we spent a lot of time on, like, the family seating. we ended up like mixing and matching some of our family members because our families do get along. So we just mixed and matched there. I think just like reminding people that it's your day and remembering that the people that love you, they'll show up for you. And if you're worried about something happening, just have an honest conversation about it.
Mhm.
But I was never worried that they were gonna, go at it or anything because one of their goals was to keep the kids out of this mess, but also like they love me and they know that it's my day and how important it is to have a good day.
I'm just kind of thinking about your descriptions of like what was going on the morning before this accident and then sort of kind of where things are now. And it's so hard how life can be so great at one point and then the next day there's so much challenge or you suddenly feel like you're at the bottom of some hill. And I, you know, it's just one of those wild things about life is you just never know like when things will change, when things will be different. What have you learned from kind of those experiences that help you in the future and like help you remain strong, confident, and what have you taken with it? Because obviously, as terrible as some of these situations are, like those are the situations that force us to become stronger.
Absolutely. And that's like one of my like mantras or one of my like things that keeps me going is like I look at my life now and I think to myself like this isn't the way I imagined I would have gotten here, but I always wanted to be an actress and I always wanted to be a performer. And I don't know if the current path I was on would have taken me there. I was studying psychology. I was going to be a doctor, psychologist. So I just have to remind myself that, like, going through a hard time, like things are still going to point you towards the good things. Life is all about like the good points and the bad points, and just remembering, like I found a new purpose. Like I found something that I'm passionate about, and I found a community that I can inspire and uplift and fight for better representation, better conditions in the public and better accessibility. Like I found something I can fight for and stand for and like my life feels so much fuller.
Hmm. Does any of that relate to your tattoo? I know I asked you about it and you
Mhm.
said you'd tell me on the
Yes.
show.
So it's a lotus flower with an unalome. So the lotus flower symbolizes a rebirth and the little squigglies they symbolize like the twists and turns of life. And then the unalome at the bottom is an unfinished journey. And so I got this tattoo around when I graduated college. And I just remembered that like everything that I've been through up until this point is part of my unfinished journey.
I love that. That's so freaking awesome. And I think it's great when you can create something that like you then look at and gives you hope and like lives on you forever. She says
Mhm.
with an XO tattoo from her mom. I need to up my game and having more meaningful tattoos. Do you have any others?
No, this is just one for now.
Yeah. You are also an entrepreneur. You do content creation, you're acting, you're performing, you're a part of the Rolettes. So what is it that you hope to accomplish and that like keeps you motivated every day? You said you're very goal oriented,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, so I think I was just in a short film that I helped produce that's kind of based on my story and my return to dance and performing. I don't know when that's going to be coming out, but it should be coming out hopefully soon. And I'm excited for the world to see that because I really tried to really make that as authentic and honest as possible. And then for content, I'm just trying to like up my dance game, my acting game. I'm in acting class every week, just trying to get there, get myself in front of like as many people as possible. Yeah, because that's the ultimate goal is to be a working actor.
I love that. I see it, the next Ali Stroker.
Hopefully.
Josie, thank you so much for coming on the pod. It was such an honor to have you and honestly just get to know you better. I know we've done some collaborations and we follow each other, but I really loved getting to know you and thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. It's been so great to just like talk to you and be a part of like what you're doing for the world. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Real Pod. If this hit home or helped you in some way, send it to a friend, a teammate, roomie. Share the love, share the realness. New episodes of Real Pod come out every single Wednesday. So make sure you are subscribed to this podcast so you never miss an episode.